Joining me now is James Atkinson. He is the CEO of Advanced Gold Exploration. Good to see you, sir.
Well, good to see you, too.
Now, you have a strategy where you like to try to identify assets that have historical data, and then you bring your expertise to the fore along with your team and bring in modern techniques to try to create value and maybe evaluate the assets where you think they should be, higher, obviously, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. We'll talk about our projects a little bit later. But one of the things that I like to do in the past is, and I always tell people when they ask me, how do you do it? Well, one thing I do is I look at old maps, because the old timers were pretty good at finding stuff. And oftentimes that information doesn't get translated onto new maps. But notwithstanding that, when we do get a project that has lots of data, the first thing we do is try to digitize it and put it into a format that we can actually take a look at. And one of the things, for instance, in Ontario, the Ontario government has a very large database of samples that they've taken across the province. And so we take a look at that, we run some statistics on it, and we'll come up with, sometimes we come up with gold or copper showings, but oftentimes we come up with zones of alteration that really haven't been looked at. And so we take that and we use, again, modern statistics, if you want to call it that, or modern geophysics. A lot of the areas were flown by geophysics in the old days, but the new geophysics has much more abilities to determine what's really there. And so we use that. So yeah, we try to use modern technology to upgrade old projects.
Very good. Now, you've got 4 assets, and you've got one called Melba. So 2 of these assets in Canada, 2 in the U.S. Right. One's called Melba.
Yes.
And you said it's simple because the gold is there. Well, how is it simple?
Well, the old timers found it. It's about 15 kilometers from Kirkland Lake. So you can imagine it was probably an area that was well prospected. The difficulty they had is that there is a single outcropping of rock there. The total area is surrounded by swamp. So the old timers, they found the gold that was sticking out of the ground in the outcrop. Well, obviously they had no techniques to explore in the swamp that surrounds it. So we do now. We have modern geophysical techniques and even some geochemical techniques that allows us to expand the footprint of the gold that's there. We know it's there because our prospectors find visible gold in the veins, and there is an old working there, some underground workings that they did back in about 1920, that kind of time frame, and they did mine some gold there. All the material that they mined is actually still piled on surface. None of it was taken away.
Really?
Again, because the access, although it's 15 miles from Kirkland Lake, and it's about 5 miles away from what's called the airport road from Kirkland Lake, it's between there and the road it's swamp. So the access is not that good. So yes, we have that one. The interesting thing for us about that one, as I said, hasn't been well explored. We drilled some holes last year in 2022, and we found a brand new style of mineralization there. And these are porphyry dikes that have disseminated sulfides, disseminated pyrite, and they are anomalous in gold from top to bottom. And some of these dikes are 8 meters wide. And although none of the gold that we recovered or that we found in the drilling would be considered ore grade, at least it shows that dike has anomalous gold in it. So we're pretty excited about following that up, as well as following up more on the high-grade zone that we know is there. We have done some modeling on it, so we now have an idea of the trend of that high-grade zone. And again, that was not something the old-timers, they could have done it by hand. They probably didn't. Now we can do it by modern technology. And so we can say, okay, here's where the high-grade pod is. We can do some more drilling to try to trace that out,
okay,
as well as exploring around. We have about 4.5 kilometers of strike length from that outcrop. Again, it's all swamp, but from that outcrop. The other interesting thing about that property is that a few kilometers to the north, along we think the same structure, is the old Ross mine. And the Ross mine actually produced 1.5 million ounces of gold and 1.5 million ounces of silver. And it's very unusual in the Abitibi, where this is located, to have equal gold-silver ratios.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something a little different about the mineralization there that really hasn't been that well explored. If you go a little farther north from the Ross mine, you run into McEwen's Black Fox complex. So
Okay.
it's sort of a good location, right?
Right.
So that's Melba in a nutshell.
All right. And then Doyle project is near Sault Ste. Marie. What are the broad strokes of that?
Well, the broadest stroke of that is that the Doyle property has been compared to Hemlo. And it's been compared to Hemlo by Robert Valiant, who was one of the guys that discovered Hemlo. And Robert actually did work there from the mid-'80s till 1995. They drilled 30 or 40 drill holes and found gold in 4 different locations. What they ran into in 1995 was $300 gold. So they had some other projects they were working on, so they actually let it go. And so that's, again, another thing we can bring to the projects is a new gold price and a new gold regime, if you want to call it that. So we're really excited about that property. We want to get back in there, and we've done some airborne geophysics on it. We've done some LiDAR work. When Tri-Origin, that was Robert Valiant's company, when they had it, they did IP. We have all that data. So we can put all that together and make a model for the mineralization that we think is there, and we'll be working on that going forward.
Okay, and then down south, 2 assets in the Carolina Gold Belt. What's the overview there?
Well, the Carolina Gold Belt, I'll just give everybody a quick rundown. That was to where the first gold rush in America was. And the reason that it was discovered was actually discovered by a young boy who found a gold nugget in the stream on his farm. Well, the gold nugget weighed 28 pounds. And they didn't know what it was, so they used it as a doorstop for a while. Until a jeweler came along and recognized that it was gold and said, "Hey, I think that's gold. I'll give you $3 for it." So that's the story. But they did mine about 1.5 million ounces off of that property from the placer that was there. So the Carolinas has a long history. It has an operating mine now called the Hale Mine, which has been operating for some years and has probably 5 million ounces of proven and probable resource. They're making some really good discoveries there of a deeper zone of maybe higher grade mineralization. The Hale originally was an open pit. They now have gone underground and are doing some workings in some higher grade material. And speaking of grade, right beside the Hale mine, you have the old Brewer mine. And that was, again, an open pit, lower grade. But a company recently called Carolina Rush put out a press release where they announced, I believe it was 65 meters of over 7.5 grams. Very, very high grade, large structure, large project. So we're a bit excited about that. As far as the general area, our property, which we call Landrum, which is one of 2 that we have there, that has a resource of about 68,000, I wish it was 68 million, about 68,000 ounces of gold. Historic resource from underground workings. Again, we've done some modeling on it. We know now that there's a high-grade zone there that plunges to the southeast, and we can be tracing that. As well, there's work that was done, a little bit of work, especially soil geochemistry, that was done along strike that really hasn't been followed up, so we can follow up on that. The other project, which is, again, only not far away, only about 5 miles away, is called Faulkner Mountain. Faulkner Mountain is a well-known, highly altered intrusive. And around that intrusive is also another zone of high sort of pyrite and sericite alteration, which has low-grade gold in it. But some drilling that was done in 2018, they actually intersected a vein that was, I think, 1.5 meters with I think, 27 grams of gold. And that never followed up because, again, the company sort of walked away. So there are some different aspects to our project. Some of them, the companies got hit with a low gold price, like Doyle. At Melba, for instance, they couldn't explore the old-timers away from where the rocks were outcropping in the ground.
Right.
Faulkner Mountain, the company walked away from a high-grade epithermal gold intersection. So we have those kinds of aspects. Mm-hmm. And yes, we bring some modern ideas and modern technology.
Right. And as you mentioned, against the backdrop of record price for gold right now.
Absolutely.
So just lastly, wrap it up for us in terms of the investment case for the company and some of the catalysts that investors can look forward to.
Well, I would say, our main catalyst would be, of course, field work, and drilling, which we'll be doing. Well, our first project we'll probably end up working on is the Landrum project. And because we know sort of where the gold is and where it's going, we think we can get some pretty good intersections there. Landrum, the grade at Landrum was relatively high, in the order of 5 or 6 or 7 grams in the resource. So we're pretty confident we can get some good results there. More interesting, I think, for us is a study that we did in 2022 of the whole area. And we actually came up with multiple targets that are very similar to Landrum and to Faulkner Mountain that really have been a little bit explored or not explored at all, but geologically resemble these areas. So that's another catalyst because we believe that will generate some new targets. Again, at Doyle and Melba, it's just a matter of going back and following up on what we know is already there.
Right.
And I think that will be the catalyst for our price. Our price is, of course, very low, as is everybody's. So I would say we have an upside relationship to the price of gold right now. We're pretty levered against the price of gold.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for the update and
You're welcome.
the information we'll be following.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, good stuff. James Atkinson, CEO over at Advanced Gold Exploration.